Hi, I'm Jeremy, the Zoo Nerd, coming to you live from my backyard in Los Angeles, California. I hope you're well. I hope you're happy. I hope you're healthy. I hope you're having some fun. Today's a gorgeous day in Los Angeles. Here at my house, it's about 83 degrees, which is remarkable because yesterday it was 102 at this time. So I'm very happy that it's cooled off a bit. Today in our critter chat, we're going to talk about one of my favorite types of animals. Today we are going to talk about wombats. Wombats are an animal from Australia, and as you may have guessed, that means they are a marsupial. Similar to kangaroos, koalas, wombats have babies that are born underdeveloped, and then they crawl into their mother's pouch, attached to a nipple, and stay in the pouch for a good amount of time before they're big enough to kind of explore the world. Similar to those other animals, kangaroos, wallabies, and koalas, the babies are very small when they're born. And they always use kind of the same size comparison. They always say they're about the size of a jelly bean. So they're about a ½ inch big, just little tiny guys, weighing in at 1/4 of an ounce. And they are born after a gestation period of only, depending on the species, 21 to 30 days. So very short pregnancy period for mom. Then the baby crawls into her pouch and stays there for at least 6 months. During that time, it attaches to a nipple and further develops, growing its hair, opening its eyes, developing its hind legs. Its front legs are already fairly well developed to help the baby crawl into the pouch upon birth. With wombats, their pouches are facing backwards, so the opening is closer to the mom's rear end, which is common for wombats and koalas, but for all the other marsupials, it's the reverse organization. Koalas are believed to have evolved from a common ancestor with wombats that was more wombat-like, and their pouch is backwards for a very important reason. They are diggers, so they are often digging in the ground to make their burrows or their home. And as a lot of that dirt is moving around, if their pouch was right here and opened at the top, as they would dig, it would fill up with dirt. And that's one, not safe for a baby wombat, but two, that's gonna be difficult for the mother wombat to constantly be cleaning out. So the pouch faces upside down. The opening's closer to the rear end, so as she's digging with her front feet, the dirt just slides past the pouch, leaving the baby a little bit safer. At about 6 months old, the baby starts to peek out of the pouch, but it will stay in there probably closer to 9 or 10 months since its birth, and then it will be in and out of the pouch probably until about a year old, maybe even 15 months, continuing to nurse from its mom. Baby wombats leave their mom's side between about 1.5 to up to 3 years, depending on if it's a boy or a girl and what species. Some species are a little more social than others. So with wombats, there are 3 species. They all come from Australia. They don't live anywhere else. Those 3 species, the first one is called the common or bare-nosed wombat, bare being B-A-R-E, no hair on their nose is the big determiner there. And then the other 2 are both considered hairy-nosed wombats, so they have more hair on their nose. They also have bigger ears than the bare-nosed or common wombat. So those are the southern hairy-nosed and the northern hairy-nosed. With the common wombat, they are very common. There's a lot of them out there. So they are considered least concern on our level of endangerment. The southern hairy-nosed is considered near threatened. And the northern hairy-nosed, unfortunately, is listed as critically endangered. It's estimated that there are only about 80 adults left of that species. Most of them are inside a national park called the Epping Forest National Park. It's kind of in northern Queensland, on the northeast side of Australia, inland from the coast a good amount of way. Yeah, and in the national park, they are getting quite a bit of protection, which is really good since they are critically endangered. With wombats, they can be about 30 inches long, so about 2.5 feet. Depending on if they're male or female, the males are usually heavier, they weigh more, and can be a bit bigger in length. The common wombats, the record holder has been 88 pounds, so very heavy little guy for not being too big. They're pretty short to the ground, only about a foot off the ground. Females typically weigh between like 42 and maybe 60 pounds. Males are going to be closer to 70 up to like 88 pounds. So they are a bit bigger. Like I mentioned, their closest relatives are koalas. Together they are in the order of animals called Diprotodontia. I don't know how to say Latin words, sorry. But that's their order name. Wombats are vegetarians, so they eat grass, roots, and the bark of trees and low-lying bushes. They have rodent-like teeth that continue to grow, so they constantly need to be chewing. That helps them as they're digging too. If they come across tree roots or roots of plants, they can chew through the root while tearing up the dirt with their long, strong, sharp claws. Despite their appearance, they look pretty slow. They're kind of pudgy looking. They're a little chubby, and they're very low to the ground. They are capable of running 25 miles an hour, which is faster than any of us can run. So that is to be noted. And despite the fact that they kind of walk with a waddle and look pretty slow, they look like they would be no threat. They have been known to be very defensive and aggressive towards people who get close to their baby or close to their burrows. They will often charge at people. Despite the fact that they're low to the ground, they are very good at being able to hit you in the legs and knock you over. I have seen a wombat do this with a zookeeper in a zoo. It was pretty impressive. That's the wombat I pictured earlier, who lives at the Los Angeles Zoo. He is a southern hairy-nosed wombat. His name is Murray. I saw him take out his keeper by hitting him right below the knee, kind of swinging his backside into it. It's kind of a playful thing with the wombat at the zoo. He liked to do that quite a bit with his keepers, but it is a defense mechanism that they will use with people out in the wild. As a land-dwelling animal, they're not climbers, they're diggers. So they dig elaborate burrows where they live and where they go for shelter. If they feel threatened, they will usually run towards their burrow and dive in. And even if it's a shallow burrow and they can't get very far, and if it's like a dingo chasing them or a fox, that animal is going to have a really tough time because the burrows are exactly wombat size and shape, and the rear end of a wombat is covered with underneath the skin there's a layer of cartilage, which is the stuff our ears are made out of and the tips of our nose. So that's kind of a very heavy, hardy material that kind of gives them a nice cushion or padding on their rear end. And it's difficult for a predator to try to pull them out or get like a claw or a tooth into that. So that's a pretty good defense strategy that they have. They are excellent diggers with their strong feet and sharp claws. They have done some research on wombat burrows. They usually only have one opening, but then it's a series of different tunnels with different rooms in and around down underneath. One of the burrows that they excavated and figured out where all the tunnels and rooms went was over 650 feet of tunnel systems under the ground. So they really are amazing at being able to build a very complex burrow. With some species like the southern hairy-nosed wombat, sometimes living in a community in their burrow system, there'll sometimes be as many as 10 different wombats all living in the same burrow system. Typically, the common wombats are solitary. They don't let anybody else live in their burrow system with them. With the northern hairy-nosed, I don't know. There wasn't a lot of data about them and their social interactions. So from 1925 until 1965, that was a 40-year period, the Australian government had declared wombats a pest. With them being big burrow diggers, that was seen as an obstacle to growing crops and raising cows and sheep that may fall in a hole and twist or break a leg and injure the cow or the sheep. So the government of Australia put a bounty or cash money. If you were to hunt or trap a wombat and bring in its skin, you could get money from the government. During those 40 years, 63,000 wombat skins were traded in for cash. And because of that, it really had a big hit on the population of wombats, particularly the northern hairy-nosed wombat and a bit the southern hairy-nosed wombat, both of which live more in the central areas of Australia and in some of the grasslands of Australia, whereas the common wombat lives closer to the coastland in land that's maybe not as ideal for ranching and farming. And if you think that sounds terrible, it does. It's jarring to me to think that the government would pay for people to kill animals. But our own government here in the United States still does that in many places today, and historically has done that with wolves, coyotes, foxes, bobcats, and many other animals. Some of those bounties still exist in certain states today. I don't know of any federal bounties that are still in place, but it is something that people have sometimes learned from, and unfortunately the animals paid a hefty price and has caused some elimination of species. That's how wolves were eradicated from the lower 48 states in the United States, was they were hunted for a bounty, for money, because the government felt and people agreed that they were not needed or wanted here. And as we have looked at it from a science perspective and from a conservation standpoint, it then threw major ecosystems off balance, with too many prey species being in place, which negatively impacted other things. Australia has learned that with wombats as well, and for the most part has offered them a little more protection, and especially the hairy-nosed wombat that is now critically endangered, they've learned to protect and hopefully save that species. Two things that I found super interesting in researching wombats, and one of which I think I have a photo of, is that there used to be a relative of the wombats called a giant wombat that was estimated to be near the size of dinosaurs that lived in Australia during the Ice Age times. I believe I've seen a skeleton of that in a museum, and I think I have a photo of that, so I'll see if I can dig that photo out of my archives and post it later today. One other thing that is widely talked about when people are learning about wombats is that their poop is cube-shaped, that it's a little more square than round. I have seen wombat poop. It is slightly cube-shaped. It's not like it's dice. It's not perfectly square, but it is a little more square than it is round. Scientists have studied this and why and how that works. The bone structure of a wombat's rear end kind of creates more of a squared off shape for the poop to come through their intestines on the way out of the wombat. And they feel that it's evolved to be that way because they mark their territory of their burrow with their poop. And if it was round, it would roll down the burrow and kind of roll away. But with it being more cube-shaped, it doesn't roll as easily. So if they poop near the entrance of the burrow, it can kind of stay in place a little better to communicate to wombats and other animals in the area that this burrow is occupied and taken by whoever pooped there most recently. Yeah, always kind of fun things, especially if we get to talk about animal poop. What else was I gonna talk about with wombats? Oh, they also have really slow digestive systems. They kind of have a very slow metabolism that helps them to digest those very fibrous plants and roots that they eat. They have done some tests on the digestive process of a wombat, and they have learned that it sometimes takes 14 days for something to become totally digested in a wombat, which is pretty long time. I'm happy that our digestive system is not that slow, because that would be a little crazy if you ate something and it was 14 days before it was out of your system. With wombats, some of the threats that they face today are habitat loss, including competition from livestock and ranching, as well as agricultural crops. They are still in some areas, I believe it's in the southern population or the common wombats are still sometimes hunted by farmers and ranchers, and they are not protected, the common wombats, like the other two species are. Another big threat for them is cars, as they are kind of slower walking animals, and they are mostly nocturnal or active at night. When they cross roads, that is often a very dangerous situation for them, especially in places where roads are new. I have mentioned before that the government of Australia is really good at trying to deter animal crossings of roads, building special bridges over the highways to allow the tree-dwelling animals to cross over. They also have some places where ground-dwelling animals can go under a highway in kind of an underpass situation, so that they can be a little safer. And they have big fences along the side of the highway to help kind of get the animals to go to the spot where the tunnel goes underneath. Special shout out today is to an organization called the Wombat Protection Society of Australia. They sound like really cool people. They've done some really great work. They help to educate people about the importance of wombats on the ecosystem and help people to understand that they are not pests, as well as treating any injured or sick wombats that come through a series of animal rescuers in Australia. They're a very good resource to help those people that are taking care of injured and sick wombats, and they have some really great information I'll share later today. I want to talk a little bit about my experience with wombats, although I've never been specifically a wombat keeper as a zookeeper. During my time at the Los Angeles Zoo, when I was training to become a zookeeper, one of my favorite areas to work in was the Australia section. And working with the keepers there to take care of the animals, I did get to work with the wombats there. During my time in Los Angeles, we went from having one wombat, who is the male, who was pictured earlier today on Instagram and Facebook, to then getting a female. And with the male and a female, they bred and they had a baby. And so I worked there at the time when a baby wombat was born, and I helped out the keepers a couple of days during the time when he was a little out of the pouch baby wombat, and it was super cute to watch him and his mom interact with each other. His dad was not involved in any child rearing. They don't do that. So his dad was in the next little yard over from the mom and the baby. And wombats are super cute and super great to work with, although they can be a little aggressive and defensive and may not always be so nice. There's a lot of really great videos and stories out there of people in Australia who have taken the time to help out wombats, with especially some of their threats being getting hit by cars. Often, if that is a mom wombat, she may die in the process, but the baby is still alive inside her pouch. Any pouch baby needs a lot of extra care for it to make it, and there's a strong network of people called animal rescuers and animal carers in Australia who really devote a lot of time to helping out with sick and injured animals. And there's some great videos out there of people helping raise baby wombats and other animals. I'll share some of those later today on the Facebook page. That kind of concludes what I had to share today about wombats. Feel free to like, follow, share, and subscribe any of my Zoo Nerd content across Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as my website, jeremythezoonerd.com. I'll put links up to all of that later on today, so take a look for that. As always, have a great day. Be happy, be healthy, stay safe, and have some fun. And I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.